Joining us now to discuss, distinguished professor at Touro University, Thane Rosenbaum, and constitutional law attorney Amir Benno. Thane, I'm just going to lay it out there. We've got so much to consider. What are you looking at? What gets your attention the most through this?
Bob, we have a very different case than what the government thought they had. The fact that we're even in Florida now tells you everything you need to know. It does seem like all of these cases have one thing in common. When they go after Donald Trump, in the end, they go after much lower level offenses. I was on your show with Katrina numbers of times in which we talked about the Espionage Act because of the unlawful retention and the removal of documents. Well, we would be in Washington, D.C. if this was still about the Espionage Act and was about removal and retention.
Can I ask a quick question about the Espionage Act? Does that have to do with actually selling the information or offering the information, or does that just mean having the information?
Bob, it's never been used merely for retaining information and not using it or selling it or giving it, sharing it with someone else. And it is certainly never been used with a former president of the United States who has possessory interests under the Presidential Records Act. So, we're talking about Espionage Act. We're talking about the Rosenbergs, Julian Assange, Chelsea Manning.
Actually using the information and selling it for some reason.
And having no reason to possess it, which is very different from a president who has a possessory interest in documents created during his presidency. But the fact that they're doing a grand jury in Florida suggests this case is now limited to the obstruction, that what they're claiming is the three-card Monte that Donald Trump has played with the government in not giving it back or not being honest about where it was. Because remember when President Biden was discovered that he had documents, remember what he said? I am fully cooperating. Remember what his press secretary said? The president is fully cooperating. You know why? Because they knew that once we discovered documents in the President Biden's garage, they couldn't bring a removal and retention case against Donald Trump without also bringing it against Biden.
Okay.
But if Biden says, I'm cooperating, then he makes himself distinct from Trump, who they now say was not cooperating.
Okay.
So, again, a much lower level offense than what we thought we had initially.
Right. Yeah, Amir, your point of view on this. Do you agree with Thane?
Yeah, I agree. This is going to be about obstruction. And I think that's part of the reason why it's in Florida, because that's the district where it happened. I just also think that it's the simplest case for a prosecutor to bring. They just have to show that Donald Trump knowingly concealed evidence with the intent to obstruct a federal investigation. And so the facts seem to support the elements there. The Espionage Act, you're going to have to show that he purposefully took it with the intent to either hurt the United States or to aid a foreign nation. If your removal of records, Thane is correct, it's politically fraught because you can't bring that case and then explain why you're not bringing it similarly against Joe Biden. But I will say this for obstruction. I mean, just recently, the District of Massachusetts, they got rid of their U.S. attorney, a Democrat, because they referred her to the Department of Justice for prosecution because their criminal investigation of her, she obstructed, allegedly. The Department of Justice refused to prosecute that case. So it's going to be very hard for the Justice Department to explain why they're going after Donald Trump for obstruction in the Mar-a-Lago documents case, but they won't go after somebody who, by all accounts, was dead to rights on a similar case when that person was a member of the Democratic Party. So people have good cause for alarm and for believing that there's a two-tiered system of justice in this country.
Yeah, Amir, we have fewer than 30 seconds left, but quickly, you used the word intent both times regarding the Espionage Act and obstruction of justice. Is it even harder to prove intent?
Yeah, well, intent is going to be proved circumstantially unless there is a smoking gun, which is part of what that recording is of Donald Trump. They're going to try to use that to say he knew what he had was not declassified. Not that classification really matters for obstruction of justice, but ultimately that's going to be a determination for a jury to decide, do the facts support the inference that he intended to obstruct?
Got it. All right.
And the final question for Thane. Do you still use Blue Books or is it all on computer now?
Bob, I always call you the night before the exam. So,
I know.
It's like when you were a college baseball player. I'm giving you signals from third base.
Yeah, and I ignored all of them when you said take. I went ahead and swung away and would strike out. So, all right. So I'll continue to use the blue book, even though the rest of the
There you
class
go.
is on computer.
He always gets the A+ anyway. Not fair. All right, Thane
You're
Rosenbaum.
always welcome.
Well, thank you, Thane. I appreciate it. All right, Thane and Amir Benno, thanks so much.